Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Indy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another
Oladipo!
one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Works out by Burke, bounces into Cody, puts it up, scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
You guys are awesome, baby, when it's down the leg.
Oh, a little bonus there. Hey, welcome in. A little Dickie V there.
How about that?
Join us. You gotta like it. Didn't expect that, man. Welcome in, everybody.
I saw on the YouTube that got quite a few views. That did pretty well.
Everybody's loving it, man. Yeah, Dickie V, very popular. But yeah, it was really good though. It was a fun. That was actually a fun interview with him. He was.
Yeah, he's always
juiced
he's always great. Yeah, I've had him on.
Caught him at the right time of the morning and everything. So he was awesome. Yeah, that was great, man. There is all kinds of stuff going on to talk about today. My favorite thing, I can't wait till we'll come back to, but I have always wanted, NASCAR. Sometimes you'll see fights. Football, you always see him. Basketball, you always see him. Baseball. Golf, never even heard of a fight. I've always wanted my going, man, I want to see somebody just get down and fight on the golf. Well, it happened.
Happy Gilmore, right?
Bob Barker and Happy Gilmore, yeah.
Adam Sandler. That's yeah.
Boy, I should have thought of that. But yeah, but apparently on the Korn Ferry Tour, which is the step below the former Hooters Tour, former Nike Tour, former whatever, everything tour, but it's the level down below the PGA, about a week ago, fist fight. I'm like, what? I just heard about this yesterday. Tommy Zeller told me about it. And I'm like, you got to be crazy. But not only that, one of the guys got arrested. The guy's father was his caddy, and once they got into the fight, he was using a club like a putter to keep people at bay so they wouldn't break it up. It's nuts. New details have surfaced on the stunning fight between a pair of golfers that took place on the course at the qualifying. This was a qualifying event. This is not a practice round. This is during an event. Get out of my way. Austin Daly grew frustrated with Luke Smith, another golfer in his playing group. Smith and his father they don't have spotters. Like on the PGA Tour, they got everybody looking for balls, watching stuff. In this deal, it's not. You're kind of on your own, and they kind of help each other generally. Well, he had asked them a couple of times to help look for some lost balls, and the father-son duo repeatedly failed also to replace the pin in the hole. After the seventh hole, Daly's frustrations boiled over. And he said, if we can get some help looking for balls and get a flag stick every once in a while, maybe we could catch up. Derek Fribbs, the third golfer in the group, recalled Daly, the guy telling the younger kid. This younger kid is a 20-year-old golfer from Tennessee Martin. I should say. Then all of a sudden they started yelling at each other. The kid's father yells at him, hey, we're not here to babysit you to look for golf balls. And the other guy was like 31. This other, the smart aleck was 20. He's a college kid, but his dad's right there with him. So obviously apple's not falling far from the tree. They started yelling. And then next thing you know, that college kid tackled the other guy, pinned him to the ground, had him in a headlock, and made him say uncle.
Uncle.
I'm not kidding. Made him say uncle. I cannot make this up, before releasing him. Meanwhile, the dude's father had a putter and was waving it in the air to brawl off anybody else from breaking up the fight. The guy was later arrested after the other golfer pressed charges. The Korn Ferry Tour is where the incident, and I know that that Austin Daly kid no longer on the UT Martin roster. It's going to probably cost him his entire career. That is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. I mean, yeah, if there was a reason, boy, that's just, this dude must be half psychotic, and the father right there with him. I mean, that's half a psycho.
You need some anger management courses there. I think that's
yeah. That's a terrible. Is that talent going to go to waste? But man, how about that fist fight on the golf course to start things off today? Man, just fun stuff. Name, image, likeness is not going away. We're going to talk to Alex Robbins today, an attorney. As I was reading earlier, there's a recommendation, Kevin, that the NCAA is going to push forward, but several D1 representatives have said, you know what? Hey, we don't want that. It's not going to work. Because what the NCAA is trying to push through is not going to mesh with all the 50 different state laws that are going into effect, because none of them are the same. So they're just advising them to let the schools handle this, which I think they should let the conferences handle it. But we'll see. We'll talk to Mike Decourcy about that as well. But it's a mess, and it's a mess at the last minute. That's the problem.
Yeah, and they mentioned 6 conferences are trying to come up with a model. I don't know who the 6 would be. Maybe the Big East along with the Power 5. But they're trying to come up with something that would be palatable. But yeah, I mean, are they really going to supersede the state laws? Probably not. So you're still going to have, the 6 state laws that come into effect on July 1st are going to supersede everything: Florida, Georgia, Texas, New Mexico. And it'll create some recruiting advantages. But I guess it's just a matter of how much. I mean, we saw Travell Mullen, Taiwan Mullen's brother, who's from the state of Florida, commit to Indiana. Would he change his mind if, this Florida law goes into effect and they could offer him more benefits? I mean, we'll see. But I think he's a guy that would probably, stay at Indiana just because of, the family connection. But that'll be interesting to see going forward. A lot of these kids from the state of Florida, where Tom Allen recruits very well, as we all know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's already recruiting advantages. That's the one thing. I mean, are you going to tell me that Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and Michigan don't already have recruiting advantages? So I'm wondering, is it just going to equally change up?
Yeah. And there are only so many kids to go around, too. There are only so many roster spots. I mean, you still have to kind of do your due diligence on the recruiting player and develop, which Tom Allen and his staff have done very well. And Archie Miller and his staff did not do, and that's why they're out of there. But the development piece of it, will probably become even more critical because, a kid at 18 compared to a kid at 21, there's a lot of time there to get a kid better. And I think that's what the good programs do really well is, find ways to improve kids over that period of time. There's a lot of opportunities for growth there.
Yeah, and it's going to be is it going to change the recruiting advantages for any schools? Well, surely it has to, but I don't know, how you're not going to beat an Alabama if you're not beating them now. They got big pockets, man. Deep pockets like everybody else. So
the state of Florida, I think, having these laws, it may close the gap between the Florida schools and Alabama. It could, I think, theoretically, because if you take a look at that Alabama roster, Nick Saban's getting a lot of kids from South Florida, and maybe those kids will think twice if they can get a little bit more from a school like the University of Miami or the University of Florida or Florida State, rather than go to some of these other SEC schools.
It's definitely a fight for me to keep the ball on the course. Raiders, Carl Ness. Yep, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Not bad.
Former Penn State player.
Yep.
came out with an announcement yesterday. The first active NFL player, Carl Nassib, to come out as gay.
I was thinking about Michael Sam back in the day, but he never made the roster. Did he? Or did he make the roster with the Rams or no?
I thought he did. That's what I was like. I was confused as well. I'm like, man, I thought there was already somebody.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't. I thought he played. So now you got to go through
He was drafted, and if you remember the draft day, he kissed his boyfriend.
Oh,
yeah.
Wasn't he like one of the last drafted?
He was like a 7th round pick. Yeah.
Toward the end.
The St. Louis Rams. He was a heck of a college player. He was a very good pass rushing defensive lineman in Missouri. I remember when Missouri joined the SEC. I mean, he tore it up. He had like 7 or 8 sacks that year.
And Carl Nassib, obviously active on the Raiders roster. You always wonder, I mean, as we get further along and society changes, but still, a football locker room is not society. A sports locker room, a men's sports locker room, is not always the same as society. Because half of you've never been in a men's locker room, a men's sports locker room, and it can still be a different place, especially of all locker rooms, other than maybe hockey, football, and hockey. Those sports that require a mental attitude of hitting and all that, the machismo. This is probably the hardest locker room to do that in, without question.
Yeah, but I think it's just a matter of if you can contribute. I would say I think NFL players, and because a lot of them are college educated, and I think NBA locker rooms too, are probably more progressive. I'll tell you the locker room that is, of all the locker rooms that I've dealt with in my sports career, I think where it would be a bigger problem is Major League Baseball. Really? I mean, you're talking about a lot of guys that aren't college educated that are just, I think in the Stone Age about a lot of issues.
Glenn's on it, man.
Yeah.
He played in the CFL, but never made it to the NFL. But really, baseball.
I think baseball. Funny. Yeah, I do. I think Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball's got a big problem with a lot of. You probably saw too the report about
cheating.
I'm sure you saw the report too about the sports writer that it claimed or mentioned the article that she was raped by a Major League Baseball player, and that was 18 years ago. 19 years ago. If you've been in a Major League Baseball locker room, it's very tense in there, and there's a lot of chauvinistic attitudes in Major League Baseball locker rooms.
Wow, we're already at a break time. Jeez, it just came on. All right, let's take a break. Wow, we've got Mike Decourcy on today. We've got Tronic Hoosier, and Alex Robbins is going to join us to talk about the name, image, likeness, and much more. Grace Berger wins gold. I think I talked about that yesterday. Plenty more. We'll be back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans. That was the fastest segment in the history of segments.
I know.
Yeah,
I felt like it went by fast, too.
I was like, what are you doing? Why are you popping up? I'm like, what?
Did you get my text message?
Well, I got it, but I didn't hear it.
Oh, okay. Make sure you turn your thing up then. Yeah. And try to split up your Mike Decourcy segment into 2 parts. I know usually you go along with him, but if you can separate it into 2 things, that would help.
You mean 2 segments?
Well, yeah. I said segment and then ended up switching it to part, so I didn't say segment twice. But yeah. Your Mike Decourcy interview into 2 segments. That's what I should have said.
Bubba Booey. Man, that was the fastest segment. I was like, wait, I'm just barely going over what I'm going to talk about. Didn't even really finish it.
Well, it's different because normally you don't get into a long conversation in the first segment, but you talked a lot early about the golf fighting. So
yeah,
fist fight on the golf course. Man, no video though. Can you imagine? In this day and age, there was no video or audio, man.
It's a nice.
Consider themselves lucky.
Yeah, it's a nice cool day today, huh? 59 degrees.
High is 73 down here in Louisville.
Yeah, it's good.
Good stuff.
Refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Good day to cut the grass.
Good day to play golf.
I was going through the Charlie Miller tape. I'm going to do that story this week. I've been holding it back because I had other stuff.
Charlie.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't mention that IU swim coach Drew Johansson selected as the head coach for the third consecutive Olympic Games.
Yeah. Are you going to hop on that Zoom at the end of the week? Lily King is going to be on there.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but when is
Friday? They're doing it. Friday, they're doing a Zoom.
The media day?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, bringing us back. If Mike takes a little longer, I'll text him, but he'll show up, I'm sure. Oh, here he comes.
Of course. There's the Magic Mike.
Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants.
Jim, does that mean you're
Professional
expecting a strip show later?
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Tuesday, man. A loaded Tuesday, and it can't get any more loaded than having the great Mike Decourcy with us. Mike, how are you, sir?
I am very well this morning, Jim. How are you?
Great, Kevin. Brockway with us, of course, as always. So much to talk about, man. We went through the first segment, and the producer came up, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I was like, my God, it's over. It was the fastest segment in the history of segments, but it started off with the greatest. I've always wanted to see a fight on a golf course, on the pro tour, just because it's always so gentlemanly and all that. Well, did you see the Corn Ferry Tour had a fight? There was a fist fight where a guy got arrested.
I did not see that.
Two participants on the 8th tee. By the time they got to the 8th tee, things went so bad that this 20-year-old moronic college kid had a 31-year-old semi-professional on the ground in a headlock and made him say uncle before he got him up. I swear.
That is good stuff. I have to go looking for that.
I just heard about this last night. How they're keeping that under wraps, I don't know, but I did not know about this till last night. I'm like, are you kidding me? The guy got arrested. He was a golfer for UT Martin. He's no longer on their roster. I'm like, this dude just busted his whole career, but his dad was keeping people at bay with a putter to keep them. It's just, I'm like, wow. But so much to get to. Swimming. IU swim coach Drew Johansson's going to be the head coach for his third consecutive Olympic Games. I saw a great little piece in the Star that listed the projected medal finishes for Tokyo at the United States, Australia, and Indiana University. Listed as third in the swimming. So, but it's not just IU. The state of Indiana, there was 6 national high school records set by 6 different schools in this state. So it's not just a football state anymore. Apparently, it's a swimming state too, I guess.
Oh, not just a football state. I like that. You slipped that right through there. How do you say we grow swimmers here? I don't think that works as well. I don't know.
In a landlocked state.
Yes, but it's between having the diving here in Indianapolis, the diving trials, which obviously went very well, and then having such great success in the pool in Omaha, which was an amazing sight to see what they did there at that arena. But what was accomplished was extraordinarily impressive. And there's a great tradition, obviously, of swimming success at IU. They do a fantastic job there, and they've been able to continue it to another generation. And look, if I were in charge of the U.S. Olympic swim team and picking a coach, I would want the person who was in charge of the last one to go for sure, or the last 2 or 3, because they have done amazingly well. I know that in reading some of the things online, that it appears Australia is going to be very formidable in Tokyo, that they've done a really great job in the 5 years since we had the last Olympics. And that's, that they have had very many great swimmers in their tradition, going all the way back to Don Fraser and in the past. And so it should be interesting. I've been getting very excited for the Olympics and watching the trials. The only thing that I can't wrap my head around in watching the Olympic trials, Jim and Kevin, is why does NBC hate the field events so badly? I mean, treat them like they're absolute poison. They're such great. If you go to a track meet, there is such great suspense in the way that a high jump or a pole vault or a long jump, etc., in the way that they develop. And I will tell you, of all the many wonderful moments that I've seen in the Olympic trials so far, nothing was better than the shot put Friday night, the shot put record that was set on Friday night. It was absolutely thrilling to see what was done there. And they gave it a little bit of run because it was a Friday night and the track really wasn't going. But they don't treat the field events with any class at all, with any respect. And they'll show you 100 different 100-meter dash heats. I mean, I have no interest in those. Like, show me the last race and I'm totally locked in. But the best runners don't even run hard in those heats. And so why are they showing me that? And meanwhile, chopping the field events up into little McNuggets that we barely get to see what happens.
Yeah, I was always oppressed and afraid of, like, when I ran track in school. I remember they asked me once to do the pole vault. I'm like, hell no. I'm like, you must be out of your mind. I'm like, no way. That's like, I was like, why don't I just go jump off of a 10-story building instead? But yeah, like the pole vault is something. I'm like, that amazes me. That I know it's a technique and all, but that's just one of to me, the toughest, because everything has to be perfect. There's no miscues in pole vault, man. You got to be dead on, and you're 20 feet in the air. So yeah, that's it's just an amazing thing to me.
Yeah. I got a chance to see, after the Olympics in 92, when I was in Barcelona, I went with my wife. She came over and we spent some time over there, and we went to a track meet in Monaco. And so we were right in the end zone where the pole vault was, and got to see Sergei Bubka go over 20 feet. And it was breathtaking. And it's not just, I know that they have trouble with the time in between, but it's not that hard to flash over and say, okay, now, it's time for Sergei to take his second run at clearing 20 feet. And it's fascinating. And they just don't do anything with it at all. I get very frustrated watching that. I think that's why some people opt in times for the streaming, because they show, you can see the whole thing. But I think it's great suspense and great television if it's done differently, and certainly a lot better television than sprint heats or distance heats that at the end of the day, the best runners really don't go that hard, don't go anywhere near their best, because they don't want to get hurt, and they know they're going to qualify at 85 or 90%, and they move on.
Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to bring up, getting back to the swimming, you could make the argument that the greatest Indiana athlete of all time is Mark Spitz, and going back to the 1970s. And it was really interesting. I interviewed Ray Lewis once, I think it was 2 years ago, and he mentioned, a lot of people talked about, Bob Knight not coming back to Assembly Hall. Apparently, like, Mark Spitz hasn't been back to the Indiana campus in decades. That's kind of a fascinating story to me, that a former Indiana swimmer Have you ever had any encounters with him, Mike? And if so, yeah.
No, yeah. He's not someone. He's not someone who operated in the public sphere a lot. I mean, I certainly would if I had fame. A lot of athletes have used their name to make money, and like I said, if I had the opportunity to do that, I would do that. He has, and he's very rarely done that. His fame has faded a little bit over time, just because not everybody was around to see what he did. I was a young man, a preteen when he did what he did, and it was really amazing to see. And he was an icon during my teenage years, but he never really spent that much energy trying to trade on his celebrity. So that may be somewhat why I've not had the opportunity to interact with him. I mean, I got a chance to interview Bob Mathias in the 80s, people like that, but never him. And I do think that he's someone that would be a great person to have come back to IU and be embraced by the university community, because he not only was an unbelievable athlete, but also an unbelievable student athlete. Went on to dental school and a successful dental practice after his college career, and his swimming career was over. Unfortunately, his swimming career ended in 72, because back then athletes in the Olympics had to be amateurs. And if he was going to make any money off of what he did in 72, and I'm sure he did well in that brief period, it had to happen fast. And so he couldn't be around for 76.
Yeah, you don't hear he doesn't go back to the Olympics. I haven't even seen him. I can't tell you the last time I've even seen him making an appearance.
There might have been a story about him in one of the recent Olympics. I couldn't pin down which one. There might have been one maybe at a point at which they were comparing him to Michael Phelps or something. I think I might recall something like that. But, he's been general, and different people have different approaches to public life. And I don't condemn anyone for cashing in, and I don't condemn anyone for choosing to live a private life.
He's done some commercials. In 2019, he did a commercial for EKG device by Cardio Mobile. In 2012, he was ageless male. And before that, the shit commercials back in the 70s. I'm sure he did. I'm sure he sold a lot of razors.
If you're interested, check out the poster. I'm sure you could find an image of it that he did with his 7 gold medals on. It was like the
Burt Reynolds thing, or whoever it was.
The Farrah Fawcett was on everybody's wall when I was a kid, including mine. That was a big one. Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely remember that. Tons going on besides that. Name, image, likeness is coming to a crash. I mean, it's coming to a head-on collision, basically, between, I don't even know who between, the NCAA, the athletes, the schools, because now the schools are saying, NCAA, that's not going to work what you got going. We need to do something different. And this is in the 11th hour here.
Yes, it really is. I mean, we're 10 days away from a fair number of the state laws going online. I know that a group of big-time conferences proposed yesterday legislation that would allow schools in those states that have NIL laws, and I think we're up to 19 now, to abide by those laws, and any that are not in such states to basically to follow their own course. And that's a little bit problematic, but I don't know that they have much choice but to open that up. And I know that they want to, and it's a shame that that whatever was wrong with the proposal that they presented legally, I guess, in a sense, in January, the one that they were going to vote on in January that the Justice Department warned them away from. It's a shame it didn't get done, because we'd have a lot less consternation as these state laws start to come up. But yesterday was a really bad day for the NCAA. I mean, they got hammered in the Supreme Court like they've never been handled in court before. They've faced some really severe financial penalties in the past, financial judgments, I should say, not penalties, financial judgments in the past, or settlements that were really just extraordinary sums. But I'm not sure that any of that added up to being slammed by the NCAA 9-0 and the opinions that were written that were pretty harsh upon how they operate. But I look at it and I think that if they get NIL done in some way, shape, or form, okay, so what would be the complaint then? Like, what do you sue for then? What's left out there? I know the door's open to sue, but what do you sue for? And if you're suing to get paid as a student athlete, I mean, to be treated as a worker, I think in the end, whatever the universe of NCAA Division I athletes is right now, and I don't know what the exact number was, but let's say it's 10,000. I think I'm probably a little bit more than that. Let's say it's 10,000. They're probably out of that 10,000, if you sued to get paid, probably out of that 10,000, about 2,500 to 3,000 might be better off or might be well off. And about 7,000 would be really badly off. Because I think that at the point at which you have to get paid, sports start going away or start being relegated to club status and those sorts of things. So I don't.
Because then if they're going to pay them, then why are they not going to have to pay for their own scholarships then?
I mean, if you're going to pay them, why are you operating sports that don't make any money?
Yeah, because you got to provide the medical, the meals, the housing. You're providing the schools are providing everything. If the students had to pay for that, they couldn't make that money to pay for that, I don't think.
Well, I mean, there's certain athletes who would be okay because of institutional or government aid, that sort of thing. Certain schools that would be okay because they're not as expensive. But at the point at which you do that, you really put the Olympic sport program in jeopardy. At the point at which athletes have to be paid for playing, that's the question. And it was interesting. I heard Richard Blumenthal, the senator from Connecticut, on the Today Show this morning talking about how the NCAA has to be. He had like a NCAA athlete bill of rights or college athlete bill of rights that he wants passed, and he's introduced. Oh, they have to take care of them on medical, and they have to take care of them this and that. And I agree with like the medical expenses and that sort of thing. They can do better. But he said, and you have to take care of the stars as well as of the end of bench guys or ladies as well as the stars. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Yesterday, everybody
That's not life.
Business. So why should you have to take care of everybody equally? Why can't you then? I mean, businesses don't all operate like that.
That's not real life.
The same. So I think there's a lot of contradictions. There were contradictions in what Justice Kavanaugh wrote yesterday about how the NCAA's business model wouldn't be legal in almost any other business in America. And he's not wrong about that, if you want to call it a business model. However, there are elements that the NCAA and its member institutions have to obey, elements of law that they have to obey, that pretty much no other business in America has to obey. That there are parts of the law, and I don't want to cite what they are, because I don't want to say that I disagree with that they exist, because I believe they should, but they're there, and they change the way college athletics has operated over the last 50 years or so, and much for the better for everyone involved. But at the same time, those are things that other businesses are not required to do. So I thought there was a bit of disingenuity in what Kavanaugh wrote. So I would say that while yesterday was certainly a bad day for the NCAA, and certainly a day that could have been avoided and that should never have happened, I think that taking care of name, image, and likeness will put the NCAA and its member schools on much better footing relative to the legal atmosphere.
The angle that I'm fascinated about, Mike, is competitive fairness in all this. And we know a black market exists. Okay, let's face it. I mean, it's been going on since probably college athletics. I mean, is there an aspect, if we bring this above board, where there could be more parity, and we're not going to see Alabama and Clemson in the BCS title game every year if we do have a system that's a little more straight, where you do have financial compensation that's equal at some point, or what direction do you see here?
Well, I think that Alabama, Clemson stronghold on college football, Oklahoma, Ohio State. I think that is related really more to the structure of the playoff. That it's the access to that playoff is so limited that athletes who want to play in it, and why, if you're going to play, why wouldn't you want to play in it? If you have the opportunity to go to one of those 4 schools, that it's not automatic, but it's, the statistics say that it's pretty close to automatic. You'll get to play in it at least once. And so that's what you're up against. And I think the expansion of the playoff to 12 teams will mitigate that some and maybe lead to the talent spreading out more. I have a colleague who says, no, it's the reason they go to those schools because they do so well producing NFL players. And I'm like, okay, then why did all the pro prospects that Kentucky had been turning from prospects into NBA top 10 picks, top 5 picks, why did they stop going to Kentucky in around 2015, 2016, 2017, somewhere in there? Why did it slow to a trickle from a flood? Because it's not about that. Because the athletes think they're going to the NFL or the NBA no matter where they go. It's about access to the playoff. And so that expansion will help with that. But in terms of if name, image, and likeness comes out, that's spreading the pool of talent. I think that's hard to tell, because are you better off does Columbus become the absolute best place to be? Because it's the biggest city for which a college sport is the number 1 team. It's a region of well more than 1 million. It's one of the top 30 markets in America. And if you've ever spent a day in Columbus and turned on sports radio in June, you hear Ohio State football talk. The Blue Jackets could be in the Stanley Cup final, and they'd talk about this. On half the show would be the Stanley Cup final, and the other half would be Ohio State football. That's how huge the Buckeyes are. So is that the best place in America to be for a football player? Maybe. Or is it a place like Alabama, where you have the whole state on lockdown and you have this great tradition, and people want to know, like, okay, what does the offensive tackle use to brush his teeth or whatever? It's hard to say until we actually see it in practice. There are a lot of different permutations of that it could go in a lot of different ways, or it all could sort of just basically average out, and it just rise. All the boats rise from the athlete standpoint, and the competition just goes where it goes, the way it has always.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for
Mike, what do you have coming up? I know you just had your draft stuff out.
That's a good question. I'm going to be writing about the NBA playoffs a lot over the next couple of
Man, they have been great.
Oh, the game between Philly and Atlanta on Sunday night was just amazing. I mean,
that reminded me of 80s NBA basketball, because they were not fighting, but they were defensively, they were inside of the jerseys, man. I'm like, wow. I'm like, look at this. It was like everything was in tandem.
Yes.
I was like, wow. I mean, they were going at it. But it was
tremendous game.
Fun. It was fun.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about that.
And you got the big story for McMullen. McMullen? Am I getting his name right? From Atlanta. Nate McMillan.
Yeah.
Nate McMillan.
Yes.
I didn't realize. I missed the fact that he was the interim coach, that their coach got fired just in March.
Right. Amazing, isn't it?
I was like, what?
What is your feeling about like Coach of the Year awards, Mike? Because like they gave it to Thibodeau, and I mean Thibodeau did a great job with the Knicks, but don't you think that they should wait
Yes.
until the postseason sometimes, because like a guy like McMillan and Monty Williams and Phoenix too is another guy that.
Well, the problem with using postseason is that then what happens in the regular season will get completely dismissed. We do that at Sporting News. We present our player of the year at the end of the regular season. Now, at the last day of the regular season, we would do it at the end of the conference tournaments because it's pre-NCAA tournament. It's really technically part of the regular season, except that the material gets buried on the internet by Selection Sunday. So we end it at the final Sunday of the regular season and do it that way. But I think that what happens if you don't do that is somebody gets on a run in the NCAA tournament and they play 4 great games, and then all of a sudden it changes the whole dynamic. Major League Baseball has given its MVP to a regular season player for as long as I've been alive, and that's a long time. So I believe that the championship or the Final Four or whatever is its own coaching reward. And coach of the year for the regular season.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're back in about 5 seconds.
See, it's the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio's Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Great Mike Decourcy is with us, as well as Kevin Brockway. Talking about all kinds of stuff. Peyton Manning making his TV game show hosting debut. Is it tonight? Yeah, tonight.
It is tonight.
College Bowl. Yeah, College Bowl. So that'd probably be worth watching just for him. He's quite the character, man. He's just a funny dude.
I'm amazed that no one's built a sitcom around him yet. If they can do it around Bob Uecker, who had great timing and did a great job in Major League and not a bad job on Mr. Belvedere, there's got to be a sitcom in Peyton Manning somewhere. It has to be.
They can't afford him. They've been chasing him forever. Now, I just saw yesterday that Amazon is potentially chasing him to do a deal with NBC and for football coverage. Amazon.
Yeah.
And
now, they
Amazon
can't afford him
money.
for that. But, hey, have you seen how much money Jerry Seinfeld made off of Seinfeld? They can afford him for a sitcom. There's generational money in being a sitcom star. So I just think there's got to be somebody out there clever enough to write that.
Remember when they were talking about doing a sitcom with Bob Knight? I think it was like 15 or 20 years ago.
Oh,
I do not remember that.
That was a little bizarre. I remember seeing a report on that, and that would have been like a sitcom with Bob Knight. That would have been a little weird, but he had certain timing to him also.
Well, you don't even have to do a sitcom with. You don't have to do a sitcom with Peyton. Those shows he does for ESPN, they're pretty daggone funny. He's the Peyton's Places or whatever. If you watch those, they're pretty funny. He's always sneaking in the zingers, boy. He's always got them ready. I don't know if he's got some good writers or if he's that naturally talented, boy. He's got them all the time.
Saturday Night Live has been on for 45 years, I think. And I still think that the fake United Way commercial he did
in the park.
Yeah. I don't think that there's ever been anything better. There may have been some as funny, but there's never been anything better than that. It was brilliant.
And I can knock it down to one single scene in that thing. It's when he throws the ball at that one kid and he doesn't catch it. I still laugh at that. Just think that all I have to do is laugh at that because it's Peyton Manning. You're right. It is the favorite thing that I've ever seen on there, without question. Man, let's see. Nancy Leonard is going to represent, speaking of, you have your draft things come out yesterday, your draft picks. Nancy Leonard is going to represent the Pacers, wife of the great Slick Leonard.
That's nice.
Reminding Kevin earlier about, she was leading that. I think it was in 1977 that they did the telethon to save the team. I mean, literally saved the Pacers, Kevin. They were gone. And they saved them with a damn telethon on TV. Nancy and Slick Leonard on there and it worked. And look where they are today. It's crazy.
Theirs was an amazing love story. It was very sad. We lost Slick recently. There was a report on the local news here in Indy about them probably around February maybe, and it was beautiful to see. And what could be better than the Pacers winning the #1 overall pick and Nancy standing up and saying "Boom, baby"? Wouldn't that be something?
Oh man,
yeah, that would be a great television moment, certainly for Hoosiers.
That would be great. With the draft coming up, what you got your picks out? What do you see happening?
Yeah, I put out the Sporting News big board of 60 players. It's certainly subject to revision. We've got combine this week. I mean, I had on my list, I had some differences with other people that weren't the, I had Davion Mitchell higher than anyone, just about. I had him #5 overall, and certainly that was a difference than some people. And I had Sharif Cooper from Auburn. I watched his tape. I saw him play, obviously, during the season. I watched his tape. I mean, he is just a magical player. And they list him as a 6'1" point guard. And if he is 6'1", he's a top 10 pick, even as a poor shooter. Mediocre may be a compliment. There's a lot of poor shooters in this draft. It is a bad shooting draft. There are a couple of really great ones like Corey Kispert, but overall it's a bad shooting draft. And with the league going the way it's going, you would think that that more players would be working harder to excel at that. But so Sharif Cooper's lack of shooting ability is less of a hindrance than it might be otherwise, because if you don't pick him because he can't shoot, you're probably picking some wing that can't shoot. But Sharif Cooper is a magical player. The question I have, and I have been told, and in watching him play on television, I have my suspicion about how big he is. They list him at 6'1". I've been told by someone who covered one of his games that he's probably only 5'11". If he goes to the combine, measures at 5'11", I'll drop him from his current spot, which I believe is number 6 or 7, down into the teens. But if he comes out and he measures out at 6 feet, 6'1", I'm telling you, there just aren't that many guys that can do what he does. He can defense apart.
It's funny you're saying that. We had that conversation. It may have been yesterday. I can't remember, but it was about Leland Walker, a really, really good high school player in Indiana that is getting a lot of attention, but he's 5'10". This kid can shoot the lights out, but he's 5'10". Okay. And
for college, I don't care if he's 5'10", right. He can shoot the lights out. I want, like, if he's a D1 athlete, then absolutely. 5'10" doesn't bother me at all. If you're talking about Muggsy Bogues size, then he has to be Muggsy Bogues. But that's that you can get it done at that level. Even if you're a second guard, you can if you can shoot.
I saw Leland Walker. Yeah, we saw him in the Indiana, the All-Star game, and he lit up. He had 25. He was fearless.
6 of 8, I think, from behind the three.
And I was telling Jim, I said, Billy Donovan made a living off those small guards. I mean, he had some great ones, and there's something to be said for, so many people put people in the box in terms of size in recruiting without looking at kind of the ability and the heart in the matter.
One thing that's been really good about the way the NBA has gone over the past couple of years is that they all talk about putting players in boxes. Over the previous 30 years or so, if you were point guard sized, you had better be a point guard. And that's not the case anymore. Emmanuel Quickley, I thought, and I still thought like this a year ago, was that in order to be an prized NBA prospect, he had to come back to Kentucky and make himself a point guard. And then the Knicks said, nah, it's okay. He can do it as a shooting guard. And as long as he can shoot, and he certainly can, and he had a great rookie season. So I think we're seeing that now. And so Leland Walker has, shooting ability, and he's not a point guard. And again, I don't know his game. I haven't seen him yet. If he is better off as a shooting guard, you can get away with that now in college as an undersized shooting guard. But again, you have to be able to shoot. The problem with last year's Hoosiers was that they had undersized guards who didn't shoot it that well. That's not a good combination.
No question. I'm looking at your Big Ten players on your draft list. Franz Wagner, 17. Io DeSumnu, 24. Luka down at 55. I guess. What are the concerns about Luka that slip him in the second round in your mind?
Luka's problem more than anything is elevation, somewhat his the nimbleness on the perimeter, but it's the elevation problem that around the goal in order to finish. A lot of what he did in college, and he deserved every honor he got. He was the 2-time Sporting News Player of the Year, so this is not to diminish anything that he accomplished, but a lot of what he did was to power through defenders. That's going to be pretty much virtually impossible at the NBA, even as strong as he is. He can do it occasionally, but you can't make it a steady diet. So he has to either has to come up with an unbelievable array of moves. He's got very good moves, but not absolutely disarming. Or he has to find a different way to score. He has perimeter scoring ability. The elevation around the rim is a problem. And then the other problem is, can he move in pick and roll coverage, which is it's non-negotiable. If you can't do that, they can't put you out there. And he has to prove that he can do that. Iowa played a lot of zone. They were never an elite man-to-man defensive team. Luka doesn't look like someone who is going to move well in that. But if he went into an individual workout and they're going to put him through that, they're going to go, all right, guard this, guard this, guard this, guard this. And he's going to, if he says, yes, 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 5 times, 10 times, whatever, then it might change his draft prospects.
What does the Pacers need most?
I think what the Pacers need most at this point, I think they need a point guard. Holiday is fine. I don't think that they necessarily see him as someone who is as a team changer. Other than a superstar, so to speak, which they lost their opportunity to have that when Victor got hurt and then decided to leave. If they could get high in the lottery through some good fortune, there might be a guy like that out there. Cade Cunningham, maybe. Jalen Green, maybe. Jalen Suggs, maybe. I think all those guys have that kind of ability. It would be interesting to me if they got lucky and won the number 1 overall pick. Evan Mobley from Southern Cal is getting a lot of buzz for that, and for good reason. I mean, he's an incredible athlete for his size, and has a lot of basketball skill that's going to translate well. But that the one position where they're stacked, at least for now, is at the center spot. So would they take another center? I think that would be an interesting thing to see if they happen to wind up at 1 overall, what direction they would be most interested in going.
But Cade Cunningham, the point guard, right? Would you think that would be appealing?
I think Cade, what's interesting about Cade is he shoots the ball really well. I talked about that bad shooting draft. He's one that does not have that problem. He's very good at that. And he has the chance to be special as a shooter. The thing is that he doesn't do really well is he doesn't handle the ball really well. He loses it a lot for a point guard. I mean, and I'm talking about it just getting away from him when he tries to make a move. Really, you can't do that at the NBA level. They'll wear that out. So he's got to either improve as a ball handler or he's got to convert to a full-time wing who has playmaking ability. But he certainly would have appeal as the first overall pick because he has both of those options to go with. He has elite positional size, even if he's a wing, and he has high-level shooting ability that can become elite.
Question from Chris. What about a woman head coach in the NBA? Do you think it will happen? I think it's no doubt it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Just win. Becky Hammon is the most logical choice. She's already been an assistant with the Spurs. How long has she been there? 3 years? There's no doubt it's going to happen.
Yes.
I don't know how it will translate in the NBA with the guys. I really don't.
I don't think that will be a problem. I mean, I really don't. I think that it probably would be helpful for the first person who does that to have a level of familiarity with the athletes that she would coach.
How important is he has success? Most importantly, though.
Well, I was going to say that it would be helpful for those who follow that if they had success, if she had success, because there's no guarantee in any direction regarding the hiring. The Pacers are obviously an example of that last year. They hired someone who had the right resume, but it didn't work. You could hire with somebody who is a complete outlier, and it could be successful. So I think that hiring someone like Becky Hammon, you have to look at it and judge her on her own, and not necessarily as, well, see, a woman coach can't work. It'll work if she has the available players and the support of her management. And that's the truth of pretty much every person that's ever been hired. Why did Brad Stevens be successful in Boston? I mean, he came from a direction that other great college coaches have failed. John Calipari, Rick Pitino. He succeeded in part because of the way he approaches the game, but he also succeeded because he had great players and great support from management. And that's really what Becky Hammon, or whoever the first woman is, will have to have in order to succeed.
No question. And a natural place would be, if I don't know how much longer Pop is going to coach, right. There's your natural progression right there. I mean, they are the ones that have the confidence in her. She's been there for 3 years. Paul Gasol, he's a former Spurs player, says, I played with some of the best players of this generation, and I played under two of the sharpest minds in the history of sports in Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich. I'm saying Becky Hammon can coach NBA basketball, period. That's a pretty good statement. There's a pretty good statement.
I mean, she's worked in the summer league. You've seen her work in the summer league. She's good enough. There's no question. She may not be the first, because it may come down to her being Pop's successor, and we don't know when Pop will leave. I think that's a really good situation for her. And as I said, it would be helpful for the first woman to have that level of familiarity, because there are differences in the communication and that sort of thing, at least at the start. And so I think that would help the transition. And so I'd like to see that happen, but obviously I'm not chasing Pop out of the game. When he's ready, he's ready.
He's too much fun. He's too much fun to hang around. I cannot thank you enough, Mike Decourcy. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter, and he's a senior writer for the Sporting News. Man, your duty. You still got a few months off, I guess, for Fox and BTN before that kicks back off.
Absolutely.
Rest while you can, but enjoy your week, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Jim and Kevin. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. The great Mike Decourcy joining us here on this Tuesday. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans. That was a great segment. But I love talking to Mike.
Flying by today.
Well, it just has been. I mean, God dang. Thank God we didn't go to 3 hours. Or 4 hours. Gee whiz. I don't know. I could take doing a 4-hour show.
Does Doug Gottlieb, is his show 4 hours in the afternoon?
I don't know, but he doesn't have to put the work in that we do. He's got his producers have assistants. He's got multiple producers, and they have assistants, and he's got assistants, and
Dan Patrick goes 3 hours, right? But he's got that whole.
Yeah, but he's got the Danettes, man.
Yeah, the Danettes, man. That's my favorite national radio show is Dan Patrick.
Yeah. I liked Fritzy. Fritzy's one of my favorites.
Fritzy? Is he from where you're from?
He's they're all New York guys, yeah.
Okay, they're all New York guys. I didn't know they all were. One of them has a very distinct accent. I guess that's Fritzy.
Yeah. Although McLovin, I think, is from Philadelphia.
Yeah, can you call me back in an hour? I'm in the middle of doing my show right now.
Yeah, McLovin.
No, it's okay.
He definitely has the best name. I know it's taken from
an
the
hour
movie Superbad, but it's my favorite.
Yeah,
Thank
McLovin and Fritzy. And I think Paulie Paps is from like the Midwest. He's from like Illinois or something.
Mm-hmm. Who? He's got Seton, and then Paulie. Yeah, that's his four Danettes.
The Danettes, yeah.
Talk about the Danettes, yeah.
Oh, that is that is the exact format I wanted to do.
That's what we did down in college. Obviously, we were college students, and it wasn't professional in any way, shape, or form, but that's what we did. We had our hosts, and then we had our little other guys, whatever you want to call them. I called them the Zonettes because our show was called The Red Zone.
I that is the exact format that I really wanted to do. I really – I did. I wish we could have had a couple interns. And maybe I'd like to – that's not that can't happen. I'd have to move.
So yeah, you can do it if you can teach them how to use StreamYard correctly and everything. But
well, if they can't learn how to do that, they're idiots and they won't be working there.
I'm just saying, interns can be interesting people sometimes.
Dude, they're college students.
Yeah.
If you can't learn how to StreamYard is elementary.
I guess I'm thinking of it from the producer side of things. They wouldn't be messing with that stuff.
What'd you say, Ellen?
Anyway.
Hey man, that was my doctor.
It has homemade coffee cakes and much more. Sam's Place in Broad Ripple has wings, tender steaks, and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Man, I just let that roll on for a minute. Jamming it up a little bit this morning there. John, the producer. Feeling good. Welcome in on this Tuesday. It's been it's flying by, man. Kevin Brockway with us, of course, from CNHI Papers, but just finished up with Mike Decourcy from the Sporting News, BTN, and Fox. Waiting for Chronick's going to join us next. Sometime here in a minute. And we're also going to talk to Alex Robbins, an attorney here in Indiana locally, about name, image, likeness, and all of that, how it will affect our schools. And the fact that Indiana is one of the states that is, to my knowledge, are they even looking at name, image, likeness legislation right now? I'm going to say no, because they just kind of follow the lead. But politicians, I think they've helped and hurt this entire process. They've helped it some by spurring it on, and I think they should have said, hey, threatening, hey, we're going to do this if you all don't, and we mean it. But they went ahead and they enacted stuff, and now it's screwing everything up. Now you've got 6 states in and this and that, and you've got so many people that have no clue about how sports actually operate, and there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And that's the fear of, what is it going to – just don't screw up my college athletics. College sports are the funnest. It's my personal – most enjoyable athletics to watch. College basketball, college football, because they compete every game. Whereas the NBA, the playoffs are awesome. They're incredible to watch these playoff games. During the regular season,
Well, what's going to happen when we expand the college football playoffs then?
That's going to be fun.
But, well, you say it's going to be fun, but is it going to devalue the regular season? You're talking about every game and players, taking games off and so forth and everything like that. You're going to see a lot more of that with the college football playoff. So be careful what you wish for. Now, it's going to give you more opportunity, but you're also going to have a little bit of that. I think conference title games are going to become a little more meaningless. You're going to be resting up for the playoff because it's going to be all about the playoff. And that's the direction that that's going to go.
Yep, and we shall see. What have we not talked on here today? Let's see. Oh, how about Nate McMillan?
Yeah.
Not that hasn't been talked about by other people. I mean, big Game 7 upset win, top seed 76ers. You've got the guys calling out Ben Simmons on the Sixers, and Nate McMillan, like I said in the last segment, I didn't know he was the interim coach. I didn't know how do you fire a coach in March? mean, they fired their coach in March. Wow. I don't follow the Hawks, so I don't know how things were going there. Did they have a turnaround after that point? I mean, obviously they're
they did. They were 19 and were they 19 and I don't remember what they were, but I did a story in May about it. Dave McMillan was on a Zoom. They were going to face the Pacers. It was his first game back, and he just talked about when they fired the previous coach. His name escapes me. Just how everyone just felt like they had to do a little bit better, and the fact was that and himself included. And with Nate, he got a chance to kind of observe a little bit, see what that team was all about, and stepped into a good situation. But I mean, Trey Young is playing at a great level right now, and you got Clint Capella there. You've got a lot of good pieces there, but he's a defensive coach, and there's something to be said about getting stops this time of year. It really translates to every level. You can, you get a team that gets a few stops in crunch time, and you've got something. And I think Nate's big problem in Indiana and losing all those playoff games the last 2 years, a lot of bad luck with injuries. Losing Oladipo in 2019 postseason, losing Domantas Sabonis in the 2020 postseason. Both years, obviously, his best player during the regular season goes down, and this year he's got Trey Young, and they're just taking off and running with it.
Let's see. I think Indiana's made yet another offer. 6'10", big 6'10" kid I saw. I forgot his name already.
Ernest Uday Jr.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't pronounce it.
From Dr. Phillips.
Dr. Phillips.
In Orlando. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean from Dr. Phillips?
Dr. Phillips High School.
Oh,
which I'm familiar
Dr.
with.
Phillips
It's down in Orlando. Yeah, it's a high school in Orlando. And what is he? 4-star kid has offers from Alabama, Cincy, Creighton, Florida, and Florida Atlantic. Big, strong kid. Looks like a traditional center.
Well, and they what year is he?
2020.
Because they've you just get the 7-footer.
Yep.
And so where's he gonna go? But I guess unfortunately, because of the time we're in, the way Tom Crean recruited was not popular. He was always over recruiting. Now you're forced to over recruit because you don't know what the numbers are. If you know that you're going to need 4 spots, probably means 6. If you know that you're going to have 3 that you got to fill, it probably means 5 because of this transfer portal. So now you're forced to over recruit, which really doesn't benefit a lot of anybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, but you've got the transfer portal too, and that's kind of
that's what I mean, though. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
you're forced to do that because you don't know who's leaving, who's not leaving.
Yeah. And hey, Mike Woodson said, in one of his recent resume, I'm going to recruit over people. He basically said that. So he's going into the mentality that, if you have more, if there's more scholarships, there's going to be, evaluation. And we're entering a new age in this thing, as you know, and scholarships are renewable every year. And I think, like I said, with the transfer portal, it's kind of interesting that the fan perception is always, these kids are selfish, they're leaving, they're going. 50% of the time, Jim, I'm telling you, it's not the player's decision. It's the coach's decision. Scholarships are renewable from year to year. It's not always the player's decision that he's leaving, okay? And that's one of the most underreported things out there.
Let's see, a couple of games. Is it Marshall, Indiana's going to play in basketball? I think I saw a report out on the Hoosier.com that, let's see. I think is that Marshall? Yeah. So that's been added to the pre-conference schedule. Is that right?
I haven't heard.
Yeah. So see, NCAA mid-major basketball programs are getting fed up with the transfer portal, so they're striking back. How? With the only means at their disposal, instead of playing 2 or 3 money games against big-time schools from power conferences, the mid-majors are just saying no. Who can blame them? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably smart. I mean, first of all, they're showing their players off when they do that. But, yeah, just stay within your own group. I would do that as well. This transfer portal is really but it also trickles down. I mean, there's players below the mid-majors that are better than that probably that they can pick up, but not as many. The mid-majors is probably the best grace because it's just a great training ground. You allow a kid to go bulk up and build up without you having to put any resources in it whatsoever.
Well, there was a good story. Pete Thamel did a good story on Yahoo about about Eastern Kentucky, and I think they lost about 2 or 3 kids to other schools. So what did Eastern Kentucky do? They turned around right back in the transfer portal, picked up a couple of kids from Marshall. So it works both ways in that, say you got a kid like a Demezy Anderson we saw a couple of years ago who wasn't getting playing time at a big-time school after 2 years, and he goes to Loyola Chicago. So you can have guys go up and you can have guys go down too, and we've seen that certainly over the years. It's a two-way street. And you could also have, like you said, guys from smaller schools, Division I schools moving up to Division I. It is a free agent marketplace. But what happens when you graduate college? Where do you identify your school? I think that's interesting.
Yeah. So it's going to be and what are the Pacers going to do? For a head coach, I saw that they're going to supposedly meet today in Chicago with Terry Stotts and 2 others to begin that. So why are they waiting so long? I mean, is there somebody else that they're looking at?
I think Stotts is the favorite. You could have D'Antoni from Brooklyn is another guy. I think that, and they were talking about him the first time because you're talking about a guy, high-powered offense guy, who also is a guy that has kind of but has head coaching experience. I think they want someone with head coaching experience, let's put it that way. After the Nate Bjorkgren experiment failed, I think they want someone that's been in the chair. But I think they also, I remember going on Kevin Pritchard's Zoom, he wants still that offensive mind. He wants a guy that, because he's looking at the NBA and he's looking at, at teams that are winning, and these teams are winning with high-powered offense.
Absolutely. Let's see. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Alex Robbins. We're going to talk about name, image, likeness, how he's an Indiana attorney, how he sees that working out for Indiana and Indiana schools and kids. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for...
And I already checked in with Alex. He said he's good for joining here in a few minutes.
Cool.
And also remember, you'll have 10 minutes until you sign off on radio, but just keep going with the interview.
Yeah, just remind me.
I'll shoot you a reminder at 10:28.
Well, they got a Cardinals game, right?
Yeah, a Cardinals game.
Louisville Cardinals or St. Louis?
St. Louis Cardinals.
Louisville Cardinals. What are you talking about?
He didn't know if we were on in Louisville or not, which we're not.
That's right.
Ooh.
All right, so Indiana targets.
Omar Cooper, I know you're not talking football, but Omar Cooper had his visit yesterday, 4-star wide receiver from, I think, Indianapolis.
You talked about Travell yesterday, I'm guessing, right?
You never can talk about him enough.
I interviewed a guy from Florida about him recruiting guy from down there.
Here's Alex.
What's up, man?
Not much. How are you guys?
Good.
We're alive, man. We're alive. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Man, you ought to be signing these players up, boy. Name, image, likeness. Make them your clients. Become a sports agent. What you out doing today? Can you hear us all right?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. You're stuck in traffic?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yes,
can,
we
I
can.
can hear you just fine.
I'm not stuck in traffic. I'm pulled over in Lafayette on my way to Rensselaer for some training for the day. So
Rensselaer, good God. Jesus, first of all, you got to go to Lafayette and then got to go Rensselaer. That's
yeah, I know.
that's a day that just got worse.
Yeah.
All right, I got to bring us back in.
One Honda dealer for a reason. For deals like this, how about a new 2020 Honda Civic LX front-wheel drive lease for just $180 a month, or a new 2021 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Kevin Brockway joining us as always from CNHI Papers. Now joined by attorney Alex Robbins from just below us here, south of Bloomington. Alex, how are you, man?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing today?
Cannot complain. We've been talking about one of the things, the name, image, likeness that is just crashing down on college athletics, unfortunately, because the NCAA has kept their head in the sand for too long, and now they're in the 11th hour, and you've got state laws that are going into effect, a failed attempt at getting a federal legislation passed, and now several groups are saying no, they don't want what the NCAA is proposing. They want to let the schools or the conferences to do it, and they're in the 11th hour, man, and they're sitting there spinning. I don't know how in the world they're going to get this done with these other states that are already set to go in effect in less than like 10 days.
I think it's going to be impossible, probably. I think it's not the most important point, but an important point to start with is they've had a decade to get this right. The O'Bannon case that really kicked this off, that lawsuit got filed 12 years ago. And, everyone has seen what's coming. And the NCAA just, I think, like you said, buried their head in the sand and pretended that, that they were above the law, and could do whatever they wanted with these athletes. And they're learning, learned yesterday in another way in the Alston case, they're learning that that's not the case. And it is going to create a mess. 6 states have laws that go into effect next week on July 1st. And those, the schools in those states, it creates an issue for really 2 different parties. If we're talking about the schools, one, the schools that are in states that don't have these laws and are, stuck abiding by the NCAA's rules, they're going to be at a disadvantage when it comes to recruiting, you would assume. And beyond that, these schools in these states that these laws are about to start, they have 2 choices or 2 options, but they really don't have a choice to make here. They either have to violate the law of their state, or they have to breach the contract that they've signed with the NCAA to abide by the NCAA's rules. And so it's really, for Alabama is one of the states, that I believe that goes into effect next week. So Alabama and Auburn football players, what does the school do? Do they say we're going to disobey the state legislature and the governor, we're not gonna abide by this, and you can't go out and get a deal with Nike or the car dealership down the road? Or are they gonna say, sorry, but the government told us that this is what we have to do, and Mark Emmert, you're not in charge of this anymore?
And now we've got the schools that are in states that don't have any kind of legislation in effect. They can't go out on their own, or can they yet do this?
Not without breaching the NCAA's rules. And I mean, I think a lot of your Indiana basketball fans are well aware of the things that happen when you do that. And, just let's talk about Indiana specifically for a minute. Ross Dellinger with Sports Illustrated had an article out this morning that had a map that was really helpful to show, which 6 states are going into effect, which states have pending legislation, which states introduced legislation in 2021, and which states, have nothing. And Indiana is surrounded by states that have introduced legislation. Illinois has a bill in front of the governor right now, and it's not hard to imagine a scenario where it does put you at a competitive disadvantage as a school if your legislature doesn't step up and follow suit, or if the NCAA Division I Council doesn't get it together this week before July 1st. Let's think about Eric Gordon, for example. If Illinois signs this bill and Eric Gordon's recruitment was happening now, you think he's as likely to flip if he can go ahead and sign with Nike or Adidas or do commercials for somebody in Champaign? Or is he still going to come to Bloomington where all he's going to get is the academic cost, which admittedly went up yesterday with the Alston case? But, it seems like, particularly with Power 5 schools, that if you're in a league that, have schools in other states that have passed these things, you're going to be at a real disadvantage if you haven't. And my assumption is that Indiana will be one of the last schools to follow suit if the NCAA doesn't come out and do something, and the courts don't make a ruling of some kind because of the relationship that the state has with the NCAA. I think that it's only fair to assume that that's the reason that Indiana is one of just a handful of states that hasn't even introduced a bill on NIL.
I think that's part of it. Also, Indiana is not exactly a progressive state. I mean, you look at things like marijuana is the same type of thing. You got Illinois, Michigan, all the states that are around them, which I know it's different, but it's a conservative state, and they just don't move on things until they're absolutely forced to, it seems.
Yeah, I think that's part of it as well. You could make the same arguments for Alabama, one of the states that's implementing this next week, but you also can make the argument that there's nothing more important to those people than Alabama football or Auburn football, and they weren't going to get left behind once California really kind of started the ball rolling on this.
I'm surprised that. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to ask Alex, if a player from the state of Florida goes to school at the University of Indiana, does that player from Florida?
Whoa, Kevin, stop yourself right there. You cannot make that mistake. That mistake can never be allowed to happen here.
Yeah.
Indiana University, please. Thank you very much.
Indiana University, rather.
There you go.
Indiana University. No, I was just curious about economic. I was just curious about economic rights. Do the rights of the player come from the state, or do they come from the institution?
So my understanding is that with the NIL things, that it's going to come with the state where the athlete is performing or competing. It basically would act just like state income tax laws would.
Pro sports, those guys, if they live in California,
right,
but they play for New York, they've got to pay both taxes, I think, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, it's don't hold me to that, but that's my best understanding is that, if you were, or take it vice versa, if you were an Indiana athlete and went to Florida, you would still have the NIL rights that Florida's about to enact. You come from there to here, though, not going to be the case.
The one thing is, Indiana is not alone. There are tons of states that are in this position. So there's no way that I can see these states and schools saying, hey, we can't compete at this disadvantage. So they've got they're going to have to do something and do it fast. But what happens usually when you do something this big, this fast, mistakes are made and things are missed.
Yeah, and I think the NCAA is, Mark Emmert had that leaked email or memo that was sent to the schools that said, get ready for NIL because it's coming. But they have to be glad that not every state has gone out there yet and done anything, because it's going to give them an opportunity to do what they did in the 90s in the Miller case. You may recall that UNLV had an issue with the NCAA's treatment of Jerry Tarkanian and enacted a law that basically prohibited the NCAA from punishing state employees or something of that nature. And UNLV sued, and the law, or the NCAA sued the state of Nevada. And the law was actually struck down based on the grounds that they couldn't pass a law that breached the way the NCAA could contract with other actors, that it was an impediment to their freedom to contract. And I think the NCAA is going to make two arguments if these things end up in court. They're going to make the same kind of argument that these state legislatures are impeding on their ability to contract with their member institutions by creating a rule that runs afoul of how they want to contract and how they already have contracted with them. And second, they're going to make an argument based on the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, which says that Congress has the authority to regulate commerce among the states. And what it means is between the states. So anything that's interstate commerce, Congress has the ability and the authority to regulate. States do not. And so if Congress doesn't pass an NIL law, and I think we've seen that ship has sailed. They tried, they couldn't get it done, couldn't get anything out of committee. If Congress doesn't do it, the NCAA, I think their best argument is to go to the courts, to the federal courts, and say, look, all these states have different laws, and it's making us, and really anybody who ever wants to be like us, it's making it impossible for us to put on these competitions and run this business that does operate in 49 or 50 states. And that's going to be their best argument moving forward. So I think that practically the best thing would be for the Division I Council, who I believe is meeting today and tomorrow, to do what they should have done in January and pass a rule. And at this point, they probably need to pass a rule that matches whatever is the most liberal application of the NIL laws out there right now, presumably the California law, and then let everyone know that that's the rule starting July 1st. But in the alternative, if they decide that they want to be headstrong about it and fight like they did in the Alston case, then, I don't think that there's any question that if they decide to fight the states on this, that this is headed to the Supreme Court, and we'll have, another opinion like the one yesterday on college athletics.
Let's take a quick break. If you're listening on ESPN Radio in Evansville, the ref, we got to cut out, let you guys get off to the to Dan Decourcy for the Cardinals game today. So we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, and we'll take a break and be right back. Okay, we're back. They had to cut out early for radio down in Evansville today as they have a Cardinals game. But, Indiana basketball, I mean, people, they're not going to want to see Indiana, especially right now after these years of what they've been going through. And now to see them on the precipice of getting back to where they were, to have something like this interfere with that. But as of this moment, it hasn't seemed to be a problem. Recruiting is flying. Football recruiting is flying. And like IU football just signed Tywone Mullen's brother, Travell, who's a four-star. He's leaving a state. I'm trying to think. Is Florida one of the six?
Yeah,
I know five of them are in the Southeastern Conference. So he's leaving a state of which he had offers to stay in. So it's maybe not as big a thing yet for the freshmen. Maybe it's just for the 5 stars right now, the elites.
And I think yet is probably the key. You know, we don't really know exactly how this is going to play out yet. You know, I talk about the big court battles, but we're probably going to see little ones too, right? Where the NCAA comes in and says, look, you know, this is, the state says that you can do these name, image, and likenesses, but we think that this goes outside of what the state says has to be allowed, and it runs afoul of our rules. And we're going to see, you know, down the road a few years, we're going to see what the limits are. Now, again, hopefully by a few years, the NCAA or Congress or someone will have taken care of this and there'll just be a uniform standard. But, you know, imagine you're 15 right now. And a guy
I was
like
just going to
Zion
ask about
Williamson's getting ready
kids
to be
in
a
high
freshman.
school, 16 in high school. How is that not going to trickle down to that?
I don't know. I mean, it probably is going to, right? And then you're going to be talking about the NCAA having to deal with, you know, recruiting and, you know, the shoe companies and, you know, who they're all locked in with. You know, does Zion go to Duke if he gets a shoe deal with Adidas at 14? You know,
Well, he already had a shoe deal with Nike. So,
well,
so I mean, yeah, Alex, could you see athletes from states that don't have NIL laws, such as Indiana, make challenges in court?
Yeah,
there's no challenge. I don't know how you can challenge though, because if there's no law in place.
And I'll tell you why. If you'd asked me that before yesterday, I don't know that I would have said yes. But you know, for the listeners that aren't aware, you know, the Alston case yesterday, which was about, it was really about defeating amateurism when it started. But once the Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit got a hold of it, it really became about whether or not schools could pay educational expenses and things like that for students. So computers, pay them for internships, pay for their study abroad, things like that. And the NCAA knew they were going to lose, appealed anyway to try to prove a point, and they lost 9-0 yesterday in the United States Supreme Court. And what really stands out are two things. One, there's a case from 1984 called Board of Regents that the NCAA has relied on for, you know, since 1984 to really hang on name, image, and likeness and on amateurism. And it really didn't even involve athletes. And in dicta, which means just kind of in a throwaway line, one of the justices wrote, we should defer to the NCAA when it comes to dealing with student athletes. And yesterday, the United States Supreme Court said that was dicta, it wasn't precedent, and we shouldn't defer to the NCAA on student athletes. So the case that has been their moneymaker for 30 years now doesn't exist anymore, essentially. And the second part is Justice Kavanaugh wrote a concurring opinion in yesterday's case talking about the fact that the NCAA is not above the law, and he feels like it is a cartel, basically that they run afoul of antitrust laws, and that in any other industry, if we saw the things happen that the NCAA does and the way that they limit competition, and by competition, I mean not allowing schools to pay players, not allowing them to have name, image, and likeness rights. If we saw that in any other industry, if you said that, you know, radio hosts were capped at how much they could earn, or if we said that nurses, you know, were capped at how much they could earn, that we would repudiate those laws. We would find them offensive and we would strike them down because they violate antitrust laws. And so the answer to your question is, yeah, I think we're going to see students that play in states that don't have these laws challenge the NCAA and say, you know, you violate antitrust, because yesterday the Supreme Court gave student athletes the green light to do that. They said, we see a problem with this. At least Justice Kavanaugh sees a problem with the entire system. I think if it was a one-person court and the issue had been in front of him yesterday, amateurism in college athletics would have been done based on his concurring opinion. And so I think the NCAA, to me, the reason the Alston case is important for yesterday, even though it doesn't have anything to do with name, image, and likeness, is twofold. One, because I think it does open the door for students to make those complaints. And two, the NCAA needs to be well aware that the shifting landscape that we've had in society, as far as what these student athletes are entitled to, I think that it's getting to the courts now. And I think they need to pay attention and see that if they don't offer some kind of benefit, if they don't come out with a liberal NIL policy and do something that says, hey, we're trying to take care of these student athletes, we understand we're getting some free labor, basically. And that's what Justice Kavanaugh called it. He said, basically, this is free labor that's producing billions of dollars a year for them. If they don't understand that that's going to happen and get something that they can hang their hat on when those cases come down the line, because they're coming, if they don't hang their hat on something that says, look, this is how we're taking care of the student athletes, this is how we're making sure that they get something of market value, then the courts are just going to say, you are violating antitrust laws and we have to break you up. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to let your member schools pay these athletes whatever they want.
Alex Robbins joining us from Bedford. If you ever need your attorney, he's our specialized attorney covering all things that we need to talk about. There's his number. You can see it, 812-583-8356 from right here down in Bedford. Alex, I can't thank you enough, man. Hope you have a great
I have one
day.
I have one more question for Alex.
Fire it away.
As an attorney, are you a Better Call Saul fan?
Honestly, I've never watched it. I've never
favorite shows, man.
I've never seen Breaking Bad either.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're un-American.
Well,
No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. I love both of those shows. Two of my favorites of all time.
Maybe I'll try them out. I'll see what I've got going over the weekend.
He's too busy, man. He's too busy handling all this stuff. But we're looking forward to it, and we'll probably be talking to you more as this stuff continues, especially with Indiana kind of lagging behind here with this as we get closer and closer. I think Indiana basketball for a while can carry it past this because it's still special to play basketball at places like Indiana, Kentucky, and Duke, where they don't have these rules right now. None of those states have those rules, but it's still more special to play at those schools in Kansas than it is for Tulane or schools that are in states or that have them set up. But it's got to get fixed and quick. Man, I can't thank you enough. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having us, guys. Have a good one.
You bet. Alex Robbins joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat. We got more coming up. We'll be back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a new or a used. That was a great segment. Well, I mean, I thought it was good.
Yeah, until you butted in on me and tried to embarrass me. That was kind of lame, but
you can't call it embarrass you.
The University of Indiana.
You can't say that as a reporter, dude. Nobody's allowed to say University of Indiana. Oh, no. Anybody that says that, I'm going to bust them out.
Did I say University of Indiana? I thought I just said Indiana, I guess. All right. Well,
no, you said University of Indiana.
Did I say that?
Yes, John.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Yeah.
No, then that's on me. That's on me. I thought I just said Indiana. I didn't think I said University of Indiana. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When you said that, I was like, what?
Okay.
Oh, my God. That is the thing that goes through me like a lightning bolt when I'll hear it on TV, and I'm like, how's that possible? It's IU, not UI. For those
we actually
of us
had a discussion about this off the air last week.
For those of us who graduated, it's a sticking point.
All right.
Wasn't meant to embarrass. It was a joke, but oh yes.
All right. Well, no, it was a mistake. We fixed it then. But I wanted to get my point across about that because it's kind of interesting how there could be legal challenges,
There's going to be all kinds. I mean, there's going to be in Indiana. I mean, just because Indiana's great to go play at
Well, you got to find an athlete that's going to want to rock the boat. That'll be interesting.
I don't think that'll be difficult. I think you'll get a group of them in multiple states at the same time, like they tried to have meetings with Emmert before the NCAA, and he wouldn't meet with them.
Well, and Northwestern tried to unionize. What was that, a few years ago also? That was like 4 or 5 years ago.
I don't know.
There have been things, I guess there have been things where students have tried to come together, but it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Well, you have to spend money for lawyers. I mean, that's the thing, where you have to find a lawyer that'll take the case pro bono, you know?
Oh, you think you're not going to find a lawyer take this case pro bono? Oh, yeah. Jumping in on the end? Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. First of all, the attention that you're going to get, that's exposure that you cannot purchase. And then you're going to win. You are going to win. And then you just take the percentage.
All right, bringing us in.
Some craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Saw someone mention that Jordan Hall's got a contract extension. I'm trying to pull that up.
Good deal.
He was on here, had him on last week or when he first got back. Jordan Hall's, it's in German, so I can't read it. And it's not giving me an option to.
Now it's a part in Sprockets when we dance.
Yeah, there you go. That's the only German that I know. That is the only German that I know.
Loud monkey, touch my monkey right now.
I can't even read. I can read most languages. Gute Lane von Null auf 100 in Sekunden schnell und aus der 6,75 meter distance. That must be the contract value, which no idea. Jordan Hulls. So, yeah, he's didn't repeat that in English, unfortunately. So I'll have to ask him.
Well, so we were talking off air on the NIL laws and about, would an Indiana athlete buck the system? Or would, as you brought up, could it be a group lawsuit or so forth? And, a lot of interesting things. I'm just, and the other aspect of this I'm curious about is, will there be fan brushback? Will fans care about the whole notion of them not being amateurs anymore? Will it impact ratings? Will it impact attendance? I think the younger generation doesn't really care, but I do think that in some of these small towns and smaller college areas, there is something to be said for a lot of people that like college sports because they like the idea of kids playing for the pride of their school. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jim?
I wish they'd have solved this a long time ago, first of all, because when you allow politicians to get involved, well, but I'm not going to, they're no better than or worse than the schools, the presidents, and the NCAA. They're all the same because they've tried to keep this suppressed for so long. And the stupid argument is to maintain their amateurism. What the hell is amateurism now? Give me a break. There's no such thing as amateurism. You're an amateur unless you are playing for a professional team. If you're not in a professional league, it's amateurism to me. I don't care if they're already getting paid in a lot of different ways. So this is only allowing them to make some money. Right now they're not allowed to have a summer job. Their rules are so archaic and they've just refused to come into the 20th century. And that's saying that we're in the 21st century, so it's.
Well, the summer job issue was because of, the 80s and the no-show jobs with the, the freaking, boosters from Texas and the Southwest Conference and stuff. And,
which is going to be the same thing as this.
Yeah, no. And like I said, that's why that came to nowadays. I don't think that these kids have time to have summer jobs because of demand.
No.
Yeah, they're not going to, they're not even going to have time for it. So, I mean, it is good. I mean, I do find it fascinating. 30 years ago, I worked for my student paper at the University of Miami. I started out making $8 a story. I was an editor. I made $80 a week. And I did find it somewhat strange that you had all these amateur rules on college athletics, and yet I could work for the student paper. The radio station didn't pay money. But I mean, the student paper generated money from advertising, and they paid the students. And you had work study jobs also out there on campus if you applied for work study. I'm sure there are ways to do it to pay these people. Steve Spurrier talked about 30 years ago doing game checks. Like, why couldn't they have done that? Like, taking it from the gate receipts of every major football game and giving them like $300 for a game. They could have done that years ago. There are a lot of things they could have done. That they did not do, and now we're in this quagmire. I just don't want it to be obscene salaries where you're going to see like 5 or 6 figure salaries. That's the direction it could go for the star players.
Why? But why? If they're that good, well, it's not that they're that good. That's where you get into very, very wealthy people. Let's say. What's the guy that
about football? I mean, you can make the argument that those deals are being made already, and certainly we've discussed the black market. You can make
every
school
that the
star recruits are probably getting 5 and 6 figures under the table. I think the FBI proved that like 4 years ago.
Well, and I've been told I have spoken to coaches who have said unequivocally certain teams are just flat out paying players. And this is in football I was talking about, but that goes across the board, but just paying players. It's going on already.
Yeah.
So, and it's not going, I don't know if it's going to change or if it's going to equal it out.
Yeah. And that's what
this will just allow them to give them more. My fear is, and you kind of just touched on it, what happens when you give an 18-year-old kid $100,000 deal in college? Man, come on. If you gave me $100,000 at 18, I don't know that I'd be sitting here right now. And I'm just being honest.
Some kids are.
I'm just being honest, man. There's no doubt. Some would handle it great. That's not across, but I think 50% or more, it's going to be, you're not mature. You just aren't. Now, a lot of kids today are more mature than others, unless they're playing on their Corn Ferry tour. Most of the time, the kids, by the time they get to 18, 19, 20, they have common sense. But they don't have $100,000. That's the big deal. So
some of these kids might be already getting $100,000 or 50 or 25 or what I mean, that they have stashed away somewhere,
What did Cam was it Cam Newton? Didn't his father allegedly get like
that went to the church?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it did. Yeah, that's
to rebuild the church allegedly.
I didn't. Now, see, I never even heard that. That's a great one. That's a great one. I never heard that it went to the church. That's lovely. Love that. But
nice went to rebuild the church outside of Atlanta. Yeah. Yep.
Did it? Now, are you being serious or is?
No, apparently, yeah. That was like the story. That was like, Wait
a minute. Is that the story or did that happen?
That was what the dad was looking for was, to rebuild, the church. Yeah. Mississippi State was involved. Auburn was
because I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't matter because you can't give $250,000 to a player to come to your school. So.
Here's the thing. Like, I think in the last decade, it's almost like the schools that try to do it the right way. Like I come from Florida. I think Indiana's trying to do it. I think in a way, they're suckers when you look at, all these schools around them that are cheating and they're getting better players, It's
no, they won't.
Yeah.
Tim asked, will athletes stay in college longer with the money they can make before going? Why? Why would you stay in college longer if you're an NBA?
You're still going to get more money in the NBA eventually.
Yeah. So that would be crazy. And no, I don't see that being anything. Tony asked, well, what if the player that earns $50,000 for playing basketball and that school makes $20 million on receipts on TV deals, gates returns, all that compensation really unfair? Well, first of all, that $20 million is paying that $20 million is not going to basketball.
Yeah.
That $20 million goes to the athletics department budget. That $20 million is paying for lacrosse and tennis and golf and swimming or all the sports that don't make money. 80% of the sports are not revenue generating sports. Soccer, I don't know if it's revenue generating. It may break even. Baseball, it can't break even.
Some schools, LSU.
I'm talking about at Indiana.
Yeah.
Softball, that's not breaking even. So you have to go down the line, track and field, just go on and on. Name all tennis, name all the different sports. That's what that money goes to do and paying for these other sports.
Assembly Hall, my first year here, women's basketball was getting about $5,000 or $6,000 for some weekend games. I bet you women's basketball makes money here.
You bet what?
I bet you women's basketball makes money here because their attendance, actually, I thought that first year before the pandemic was pretty good. They were getting 4,000 or 5,000 people in Assembly Hall for weekend games. So I think they do okay.
They've certainly done better, but I'm not going to say that they make money. You can't.
Well, 4,000 how much are you spending the ticket there? 4,000 a game, $5-10 a ticket. You're making good gate receipts for women's basketball here. It's not like Florida where it was you had 5.
But see, that is just here in the last year or so. And let's say that they're still not breaking even. You're not making money. There's no way when you add in the travel, the plane flights, all these conference games, there is no way that they're making money.
Yeah.
You have to make money. You got to sell out and get.
Here's the other thing too about the TV rights deals for the schools like the Big Ten Network and the SEC Network, and part of the programming is women's sports and minor sports also. So when you're talking about the revenues now, the football gets the ratings and the men's basketball gets the ratings, but all those sports go into those conference networks making money. It's not just football and basketball. There's something to be said for that too.
Yeah, I may have misread what Tony said. So I do. Compensation is fair. There's no doubt. But now when you say compensation, they're not going to be getting paid by the schools. Don't confuse this. This is allowing them to make money off of themselves, to sign their own deals.
Third parties.
But the schools undoubtedly, I guarantee you, and I don't need to call certain schools out, but there's going to be schools that have, and this could be seriously the case. You could have a gigantic car dealer who has a ready-made deal set up for every player gets a car lease. You sign, oh yeah, we got a car lease for you, waiting here for you. That could be a done deal easily. Seriously, and there's not a school that really probably couldn't come up with that. Not a major school.
But and when you talk about the major sports, in the major professional sports, NBA has a salary cap, NFL has a salary cap, hockey, Major League Baseball doesn't. They
have a team salary cap, not individual.
Yeah, they have a team salary cap. But this is college sports with NIL. You're not going to have salary caps. You're not going to have regulations. So you're going to have.
But that's a great point, Kevin.
do better than others. And I think Indiana basketball, because of the fan passion, I think they can really cash in on it in terms of, autograph shows and appearances, because Indiana basketball players are celebrities because just people love basketball in the state. It's going to be the same thing in Kentucky and other schools. Yeah.
Kentucky used to do it. I know some Indiana players used to do it. The barnstorming tours after they graduate, they don't have to do that anymore. They could actually do that during the summer. Indiana could set those games up during the summer. Now they were able to get paid before, like doing camps and stuff. They could do their own camps now while in college. Just thought about that. They can do their own camps. Zion Williams. Zion, if he was at Duke right now after his freshman year, of course, he'd leave and say, hey, I'm going to have a Zion camp. It's $1,000 a kid.
Yeah.
Or, whatever. So there's just so much that opens it up to. But I tell you what I would like to see. I would like to see it go into, but you can't do that. Some kind of account that, I don't know, man. It's just,
trust. Yeah.
We're almost out of time. It's so much. We could talk about this all day. And we will talk about it again, man. It's been so much fun. Man, but it's always fun when you're here because we can talk all day. But what do you have coming up real quick?
Yeah, I got something on one of your co-hosts, Charlie Miller. I interviewed him, and he talked a lot about his relationship with Bob Knight. Also, his efforts in grassroots basketball and what he's doing now. So that should be a good story down the pike.
Yep, looking forward to it. Looking forward to talking to Charlie about all this, too. He couldn't be with us this past Monday, but he'll be back with us next week, and we'll talk about all this that's going down as well. Looking forward to doing that. But, man, this is going to be a non-ending story. So we'll stay on it. Kevin's on it as always. Make sure you give Kevin a follow at Kevin Brockway G1. What's the G for?
The G is for G-Money.
Oh, I know what the G is for. But I would leave the G-Money up there. That sounds better. But cool. Good deal. I will talk to you later, my friend. I cannot thank Kevin enough. Mike Decourcy, of course. Chronic couldn't be here with us today. Big thanks to Alex Robbins, attorney from Bedford, and tuned on what's going on in that. Of course, if you need somebody as an attorney, he's the guy, man. Does great work. He does all of our legal stuff as well. So make sure you look him up if you need to.
Better call Alex, yeah.
Better call Alex, man. Great. I can't believe he hasn't watched that, man. What attorney doesn't watch that show? But big thanks, man. We're going to have a good one. We'll be back tomorrow. I think Dylan Sin, Bob Kravitz, and we'll see what else we can scare up. Maybe get Jordan Holes on. He's got a new contract extension. Congratulations to him, a 1-year extension. So congratulations to him. Until tomorrow, for Kevin, I'm Jim Coyle. And producer John, I will see you on the radio.